Alright, this is 519 Fight Talk. Today I'm going to be looking at Choi versus Jeremy Stephens from UFC Fight Night 124. The first thing that stands out when you look at this fight, in my opinion, is it's somewhat of a passing of the torch kind of fight. Can't really say that. I'm not saying if Stephens loses, he's done or anything like that. Not even close. It's just the veteran versus the young up-and-comer. It should be a good fight. When you speak on that, let's just take a look at the records for a second here. You have Choi, the Korean Superboy, at 14-2, 11 KOs, 1 submission, 2 decisions for his wins, 2 decision losses. So here's just his UFC career so far. Made his debut in 2014 on the Edgar Swanson card. He beat Juan Manuel, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, by punches in the first round. Then he went on to fight Sam Sicilia, KO punches first round. Thiago Tavares, again, KO punches first round. Then he had that unforgettable fight with Cub Swanson there. Lost a close decision there. So yeah, some good wins. Great wins, actually. Quick knockouts. But just getting started. Then check this out. You want to talk about a veteran. Go over to Jeremy Stephens. So he made his UFC debut back in 2007 on the Liddell Jackson card, where Jackson came over and knocked Liddell out. I remember actually watching this fight. I remember where I was. And this was at the time when the 155 division was somewhat new again. It's after they brought the 55 division back. And they were trying to pump up Dean Thomas, I remember. And Jeremy Stephens was relatively unknown. Came in and immediately, just the way he threw his punches, his intensity, I became a fan right there. So yeah, he made his debut back in 2007 against Dean Thomas. Then he has a fight outside of the UFC. Just look at this resume. Then he fights Diego Saraiva, Cole Miller, Spencer Fisher, Rafael Dos Anjos, Joe Lozon, Gleison Tebow, Justin Buchholz, Sam Stout, Melvin Gillard, Marcus Davis, Danny Downs, Anthony Pettis, Donald Cerrone, Yves Edwards, Estevan Payan, Hani Jason, Darren Elkins, Cub Swanson, Charles Oliveira. And we're just getting started. Dennis Bermudez, Max Holloway, Renan Barao, Frankie Edgar, Renato Carreno, however you pronounce it, and Gilbert Melendez. The guy's just a straight-up veteran. He's seen it all, been through it all. And that might be one of his keys to victory in this fight, is just showing some of that veteran savvy. So, yeah, when you're breaking it down, looking at the cardio aspect, you can't really judge Choi on his cardio from what we've seen in the UFC. His first 3 fights, he was out of there in the first round. And the last fight with Cub there, he basically took, 100 shots before the end of the first round. So you can't tell whether he was getting tired from fatigue or punishment. It was probably a bit of both. So, and then Stephens, you see him even lately when he's tried to kind of change his style up and calm down in there and take his time. He still gasses out somewhat in the later rounds, but you can't really help that with his kind of style. He just throws everything into each shot. So, but with this fight, I don't think, there's a super good chance of it going to the championship rounds. They're going to be looking to put each other to sleep. So then you go on to the technical part of the fight. I guess we'll just go over the wrestling, get it out of there. Choi, haven't really seen him be offensive in his wrestling at all. He's got no need to be. And his takedown defense, he's pretty scrambly, Doesn't look like he's a world-class black belt on the ground from what I can see, but he looks scrambly and some good defensive wrestling. Then you got Stevens. We have seen in the past, we've seen people trying to take him down, obviously. But I don't think we have to worry about that with Choi. So we've seen in the past that Stevens will mix it up. And that's what I was talking about the veteran savvy. You've seen it with Cub. He played a bit of the pushing him up against the cage, looking for takedowns. You've seen it when he fought Max Holloway. He was looking for some takedowns. So he does have it in his arsenal. And I think he should look for that in this fight. He obviously has power and he can end the fight at any time, but why not if you're stronger than the other guy? And just to tire him out, put him up against the cage, make his arms work, and try to slow down some of his boxing. So yeah, the wrestling, I would think Stevens would look to use it periodically, even just to score points, because in the Cub Choi fight, it was a super close fight, just a war back and forth. It was hard to call, but Cub had more top control time, so that's probably what edged him out the decision there. Looks good on the judges' cards. Okay, then going to their basic styles, I guess, of striking. They're both somewhat flat-footed because they both do like to throw power. Choi is a little more straight down the pipe, technical, I guess you would call it, with his punches. Stevens is more, full power hooks. But yeah, with their footwork, they both basically like to get in your face, like we seen in the Cyborg Home fight this last weekend. They both like to pressure you and then look to counter. They're not so much cutting angles with their footwork. They stay somewhat flat-footed and kind of do those half steps, little half-inch steps in and out, and they're always, twitching their head, ready to slip and rip. That's basically both their style on the feet. They hold their hands differently, obviously, and throw different types of shots. But they're both looking to push the pressure on you and slip and rip, or throw their own offense. So yeah, when it comes to Jeremy's punches, like I said, just big hooks usually. And he does have kicks. That's another X factor. I haven't seen Choi throw too many kicks in the UFC yet. But his right hand is a piston. He throws it really similar to Conor McGregor's left hand. Just really good boxing fundamentals. What I like about Choi is you notice he comes out real intense, real focused in the pocket, and he basically shows you that he is just going to throw that right hand. I just went back and watched his fights in the UFC, and I didn't remember how right hand heavy he actually was. That's basically all this kid's looking for. He's a great striker and it works for him, but yeah, you could see he'll feint a lot with his left hand, real twitchy with his left hand, but he's not really initiating with it. He's not throwing it with any conviction. It's basically just to get you to either throw so he can slip and rip with his right, or he's just, upsetting your tempo so he can fire off the right hand on the offense. So, yeah, he throws a super straight right hand. The thing you notice that a lot of people have commented on about Choi is he's always in perfect position. So, like I said, he's kind of showing you that he's going to throw the right hand, but he's in position. The right hand's up to his chin. He's pawing with the left hand, and he's centered over his hips and his feet. So he's always ready to slip or shuffle back, to get out of distance. But the thing I did see was he does like to throw power. He likes to look for the finish. So when he does throw that right hand, sometimes he really commits to it, and he throws it with proper technique. You can really see he transfers his weight from his right foot to his left, and he really sits down on it. But the problem with that is sometimes he overextends that right hand, and you'll see him, like I said, he doesn't throw the left too much with conviction, but he will, after the right hand, sometimes somewhat whip the left hook around, not with real power, but it's just he's off balance from the right hand already, so he has to get into position regardless. So, he whips the left hook around with that, which is a smart game plan, because if you're Jeremy Stephens and you know somebody is super right hand heavy and they throw it straight, of course there's tons of counters for every strike, tons of ways to get around anything, but the basic counter, when you first walk into a gym usually, for the straight right hand would be to slip it, slip to your left, so you're on the left side of his extended right arm when he throws a shot, and which makes you already torqued up for your left hook, right? You transferred your weight to your left hip, and now your weight's transferred on your left, ready to transfer it back to the right and come around with your left hook. That's the basic counter for a straight right hand. So so if you throw a lot of straight right hands, you have to know that basically the shot you're going to be looking to avoid is getting countered with that left hook. So what Doo-Ho Choi does is he will throw that right hand, and then as he's transferring his weight back to his right hip to get back in position, he whips the left hook around with it. That's just something I noticed. It's not a devastating shot or anything. It's just, when you do throw the right hand and your opponent's going to counter with the left, that's why it's always good to follow up with your left hook after you throw the right hand, because that way at least you're trading hooks instead of just waiting on his counter. You've seen it in the Carlos Condit, Dan Hardy fight, that type of situation where you're both coming back across the center line trading left hooks. It's basically who gets there quicker, who has their right hand up to block, and who can take a shot, basically. You don't want to really be trading hooks, especially with a guy like Jeremy Stephens. So I think Stephens should be looking for that. When it comes to the kicks, yeah, like I said, Stephens has kicks, powerful kicks. He throws them like he throws his punches, just everything into them. I haven't seen Doo-Ho Choi throw too many kicks yet. But you see with Stephens, even before his last fight with Gill, you've seen that low leg kick, which worked beautifully. It basically won him that fight. So he might try that out. But before that in his career, you would see him throw the leg kick, and he would throw it without, like I said, he stands in front of you, real just half steps in, half steps back, and throws power. So he'll throw that right low kick with no setup sometimes, just full power, and it's devastating. But the problem with doing that against a guy like Doo-Ho Choi is, again, the first, there's tons of counters to everything, but the first counter you would learn to a outside low leg kick is the straight right hand down the pipe. Because when you're throwing the outside low leg kick, you're basically balancing on one foot at the time of impact, and when you're defending against a right low leg kick, there's a few ways around it. You can check, take it on the shin, this and that. But another way of defending a leg kick is to actually take it, step into it, and fire the right hand. So I wouldn't recommend, if I was his coach, Stephens, to be throwing too many kicks in this fight, because again, what I noticed was all that Doo-Ho Choi is looking for is that straight piston right hand, and it will put you out. So yeah, I'd stay away from the kicks. I mean, I'd throw that head kick he hit on Hani Jason, especially with Doo-Ho Choi having a boxing style, hands a bit lower. So yeah, I'd throw the head kick, but stay away from the leg kicks. So yeah, basically the ways to win for both fighters would be for Doo-Ho Choi. I also think it's interesting in this fight to see who backs up first. Like I said, they're both pressure fighters looking to pressure counter. I think it's going to be interesting to see who backs up. I don't think we've seen Do Choi fight backing up that much, and when we have, it was against Cub Swanson, and he wasn't doing so well. So if Stevens could back him up, I think he might have a good chance. So yeah, there are ways to win. Do Choi, obviously, fire the right hand, pressure. Not use it, but you have the youth on your side. You know, so yeah, just basically do what you do, I guess. And then Stevens, if I were in his camp, I would be game planning against that straight right hand all day, obviously, and I'd be looking to use my experience in there. At the very least, push him up against the cage for a few minutes around, build up that lactic acid in his arms, slow him down a bit, drop down to the legs, dump him a couple times, even if you're not looking to fight on the ground, just to, make him work, make him stand back up, make him think about the takedown. And yeah, maybe even go for some takedowns, right? There's no shame in it. Jeremy's a vet. He doesn't need to prove anything. And yeah, I think it should be a good fight either way.